Welcome back on the channel. This is a build-up I'm making on a very interesting subject that is the Lamborghini Huracan GT3, and this is a model that have been made. I didn't understand honestly how it is the way of the selling of this model. I really don't know, but it is a production made by KMP from Italy. It's a company owned by a guy, one man company guy, that made this announcement nowadays several years ago about this Lamborghini Huracan. I guess the first informations about this release were around 2021, something like that, and I never seen it for sale anywhere. Also, trying to look inside the company website, I didn't find it for sale, so I have absolutely no idea of the price of such type of model, and I don't know if it is available or not. So my tip is always to contact directly the company and try to ask if they make it under request. I absolutely don't know the reality of that company. And I had the opportunity, because I was in touch with this guy until a few months ago. Then probably the relation became a little bad, I think. Motivation I really can't understand, but I also understand for other reasons, probably some personal issues with me, so I really don't know. But I went to his house, to his place in Milano, and I asked, it was me honestly asking to have the possibility to build up one of this model, and he was quite reluctant because probably was still in a beta testing of the original parts. And indeed, this was absolutely a test, I think, of the production of this Huracan GT3. The car itself is, as everybody know, extremely nice. Is very aggressive in the shape and so on. And the parts which I get from this company were related to an Evo version. The Evo cars in the GT3 Championship arrived after COVID, so it was the season planned in 2021 and started in 2022. So the car is a 2022 car. Basically, the main difference are about aerodynamics, which from the ordinary GT3 to the Evo car are different in the air intake over the front bonnet and all the shape of the front spoiler. The aerodynamics was different. Also, the front bumper, this part in the real car was different, as well as on the rear part there were some minor differences in the rear extractor, which is this one that the company printed in 3D, and that in the not Evo car was slightly different, so it was not with this double step here, it was basically flat. It was a simpler and a little bigger than the Evo cars. What to say about the model? The model is I took this part, and with the discussion that I had with the fellow at the company, I used the term fellow because I cannot understand really the behavior of the company. In some occasion, the company is so helpful and so willing to do stuff, and then, if I have to be in charge, to be one of the builder, I don't know, one of the tester, I didn't know. I just know that I like the car. I wanted to make a build about this beautiful racer, whatever it takes, to have it. They already exist. If you are searching for this model made by Go Slot, that made the slot racer in 124 with a little slightly different wheelbase, that is in the same way of the body shell made by Fola from Slot Fabrica. I think also Slot Fabrica have a body of this car. As well as, if you just want to go for the easy way, there is already a Carrera Digital 124 that already made this vehicle, so probably that is the cheapest way to have a quite decent body, of course simplified in the parts, in the minor details, because they are slot racers, so they are meant to be speedy on a track, so all the minor details must be rebuilt. But as for several other subjects, there is always the way to take a Carrera Digital, go for it, dismantle the parts, scrap the body, and rebuild like an ordinary model. The model from KMP indeed is a complete racing model. It's a racing kit that features 3D parts, as you can see here. This is part of the interior. And in the wheeling of the company, they had a full detail engine bay, as well as the openable doors. Openable doors which I personally didn't want to use, and don't want to be part of the assembly of such parts. First of all, because they are made with the 3D resin parts. You know, the 3D resin is this kind of material. You know, I don't remember honestly the technical name of the material involved in 3D printing. You know, but it remains constantly extremely fragile. So to make a hinge that have to be workable, it doesn't really work for me, because I think at the second time that you open and close, the part will be crack, and then you have the finished model with a broken door. So in my opinion, that is not a good way to fix a solution like that. There is some guys that create a pin in metal with an harmonic steel folded in the same way, but you know, it's always remain a little toy, because if you finish a model and you suspect that somebody have to go there opening and closing the parts in the long term, you will destroy the model already the second time. I have some model that I made workable to test it, and I constantly end to place them in a single position, so or closed or open. So apart from the big work to make the creation of a hinge, there is no use for it. So you have to choose in the beginning if you want a full open car or a full closed car. A full open, it is partially full open, because in this specifically stuff you just have the doors possibly that you can make open, which they open also in a little tricky way, different from the Huracan, from the street Huracan. You know, the Huracan have the doors that goes up in this way in the street version, while the racer is simplified to have an opening door that goes this way, that have to be probably wide open when there is the exchange of the pilot during races, you know. But you cannot go for a display model in a garage, for example, despite the company provides for their own reason all the brake system and the suspension completely detailed with the caliper, with all the parts, you know. They are down there. You have to consider that for this model I had already just some problem to try to get the part, because I probably understand that the guy that really didn't want me to have this model and to try to make something what I'm doing, you know. Because we took a kind of agreement that was it is not a paid work, you know, that I do usually model under request for companies and so on, and usually there is or an exchange of money or an exchange of materials. You know, if you do stuff, you take 2-3 kits and so on, which in the beginning was the agreement for this stuff, and then it's completely over, because from what I understand from the last message from this fellow, he don't like at all what I'm doing here. So he don't like at all that I'm modifying the part, that I'm trying to get it to an end. Why I went on the decision to convert an Evo car to an ordinary GT3 previous edition car, for a simple reason. To try to get the part of this model was a real hell, and I waited for 1.5 years, nearly 2 years right now. And my point was simply, if I have a complete shell, if the decal exists, I would like to have a livery, you know, which I like. I mean, I am the builder of the model. Maybe if it is a work that I have to do under my taste, I will do in the way that I like, probably, you know. If it is a committed worker by the company, the committed worker that is a paid worker, usually they have a desire, which I have still the freedom to say, no, I don't want to do that stuff because I don't like the livery, I don't like the model, I don't like the subject, I don't like the fellow. Simple like that. So I will refuse the job. And indeed, when I understand that something was going in that direction, I was ready to give it back to the company, because I didn't understand if I have to pay for this model, if it was a sample for free. And the guy simply told me in a quite rude way that that was something that he didn't care. Trash it, do what you want, trash it in the bin. So I was thinking, okay, if the way is to trash it, I will probably go for a building, because anyway, I think is a good job. You know, it's not, of course, a Tamiya quality model, but is in the line of this type of racing kit, which I was thinking if I should help in some way this fellow, which I considered, not that I use the past, a kind of friend, because we had cooperation in the past, which I always offered myself to pay, never asked something for free. He wanted to do some little work for free, some wheels and so on, the wheels of my own. The NSX was a job that he made in the beginning, you know, but I was willing to ask for a price, you know. But what you get from this type of cooperation with him, it was basically that you didn't know if it was possible to do, the timing to do, the price of the stuff. So that was constantly unclear, and personally I didn't like it so much, this stuff. Returning to the model, that is probably the most interesting part of this debacle, but it was important to understand the personality, you know, that it is behind this type of model, which I sometimes make my personal consideration and remains, you know, some bitterness in the feeling, you know, of all this experience. To arrive to obtain this type of shape, I made, as I say, this bigger modification, but just because I didn't get through the company any possibility to get a decent livery which I liked, you know, he made several theoretical liveries which I see parts in his studio, parts of decal, parts of printed parts. And I was trying to understand, you know, because this is a car that races with so many different companies and so many different teams, so they have different styles. You know, the one that I personally liked more was the green one of the Grasser racing company from Austria. It's an Austrian racing team that won at Daytona and that raced constantly with the Huracan, and it was one of the winner. You know, the Huracan was one of the winning cars, so of course it was also kind of simple livery because they just have the B color car that was painted in green and black with the Italian flag, despite the company is from Austria, but you know the Lamborghini name is just the name is Italian, which I was thinking it was simple, and the company, the KMP, made that decal sheet for the ERV version used by Grasser, but I had no way to get it. I asked for 2 years to have a decal sheet to make this model. I mean, I don't like to keep the models, you know, in boxes and so on. I have already millions of special boxes up there which are waiting for something, you know, but they are complete models. This was incomplete, so if I have something complete, I can go, and when I feel it, I can start it. Also because we are still in the limbo of the model that I will make in the kind of kindliness, you know, in the way that I say I build it, because I just want to have it in the collection, and I make a kind of report and something that can be used like instruction, because one of the leaking of this parts that I get, I don't dare neither to name it like a model, was that basically I had no instruction sheet together with the parts, so it was a little tricky for me to understand what and where goes in the assembly of the model, you know. And I tried to ask also for that. The answer was they don't exist. I don't have any documentation. So if it is something of I mean, all the people, for example, that buy the tracks from myself, the cabin that I do for the Italian tracks, I have 5 different folders of 5,000 picture and technical drawing that can be used like instruction. The reason why I make it on my channel, it is that people can use that documentation as an instruction for the build. And first of all, if anybody wants, drop me a mail, contact me, WhatsApp, there is a telephone number always available 24/7, so I'm always ready to explain, you know. Not this case, no way to contact the company. Now I think also the fellow also locked me because I dare to make this type of modification, which I was thinking it was a commercial for him, because anyway it's me mounting one of his models, you know, and I never seen this model mounted around. I just seen a temporary quite ugly assembly of some guys making it. I don't know for which, you know, the legend says I go to the teams and so on. I never seen this stuff. I seen a couple of pictures, you know, when you take pictures from far away that way, far away this way, so you can see, look how nice it is, look how well detailed it is down there, the model, you know. So I try to ask for a sequence, which I never get. That was the reason why in my assembly I went like when I do model for myself, so to give the entire look to the car, which I assembled the rear back, the rear hatch, which have no pins. The part in resin had no pins to try to fit something, to have an idea on how the mounting goes. So I had to backdate all the model, as I said, from an Evo car to a non-Evo car, which was a kind of journey, because of course it's a little bit complicated to do this type of works over a resin body shell, even more in a test version, so test parts unfinished, uncleaned, unprepared, and it is what it is. Really, probably, as he said, was something that was just ready, the part that I get for the trash can, for the bin. But you know, when you really have the willing to say, I want to try to have a look. I mean, I mounted terrible stuff in the past, you know, and so I'm not scared by this type of building. It's not the indeed the difficulty of the model. I mean, I have some fun also when it is so difficult to do stuff. For me, it's kind of challenging, and I know that I can do some stuff, but I would like to do it, making anyway a commercial for this company in the way which I like. I mean, when I have agreement with other companies, I work for other 3-4 companies making this type of stuff, and the agreement is always in their side. They are not from Italy. The agreement is always do in the way that you want to, if you want to modify, do it, do in the best way, and it is extremely kindly, because they make the modeler feeling in the way that you have to just apply at your best to make a nice model from whatever it comes with the cars, and it always works, because if you see around, there is several models mounted in different livery with huge modification, with different stuff. Basically these liveries and smaller modification, like in this case, because to be honest, this is not that difficult. You know, if you study carefully the picture, you take away the front hook for the bonnet, you refill this part, so it's not that difficult. It's not like, for example, to create a master body like for the 961 that I just made, or even worse, when I had to create at the time the Honda NSX, both in the GT3 and in the Evo version. And by the way, some guys, because I posted in my social media some picture, you know, because this is the same car that was racing together with my first Castrol Honda NSX. I wanted to look back at the picture of the part that I made there, because surely several concepts like the extractor, like the aerodynamics, were very similar to the Ferrari at the time. They had the 488, and with the Huracan, with the Honda, with the Corvette, there was different type with the Callaway, you know, also made the model of the Callaway GT3. So the GT3 is anyway a category which I like, but not for the type of race and for the pilots involved. I mostly like because of the beauty of the car. The look of this racer is extremely aggressive and extremely nice in all the versions. So for me, it's mostly around the subject, mostly around the cars. What to say about the model? The model, as I said, after all this explanation, had to be converted into a non-Evo car. So I made all this modification, and I tried to find some leftover parts from decals and so on to try to get it to an end. I still miss some Italian flags, some numbers and so on, but with the previous buildings that I made with my GT3s and so on, I think here I can get something, you know, that was still part of the livery of my Honda. Some numbers are in common, some sponsor as Le Mans and so on, so sponsor from the GT3 season were still the one that can be used. So there is stuff that I can save from that older part, kind of Frankenstein, you know. And the model is then composed of large parts of resin in this type of beta test, probably custom made by hand inside the factory. You know, there is some details that can be a little modified, as for example the step, that big line under the front light, between the front light and the fog light, that the different shape have to be a little more engraved, a little, but is a minor stuff. You know, the overall fitting is quite okay if you can clean decently the part. You know, mostly I found some issues in the fitting of all the part, because probably, and once again I am sure that if this model will be released in a normal way, which I honestly today still don't know if it is for sale or not, and as I said in the beginning of the video, contact the company and don't ask me, because also many guys mailed me and say, why don't you do, you know, that in my theoretical it was if exists something under to make a body shell where you see the car at once, so you have it ready in the ends, the shape of the car, you know, and then find something maybe available to make an update, to make a conversion, you know, like for the Porsche 961, which we already had the ordinary base frontamia, which was terrible, but of course the internal part was anyway kind of complete, so you don't have to go for a street 959 or for a 911 that is really different in the chassis and recreate all the inner part of the 961. So that was anyway a base that exists. But with the Huracan doesn't exist anything at all. It just exists, I think, a toy 124 and still nothing, because from what I heard, also the major companies making resins are thinking about a subject like this, because it doesn't exist so much about racing Lambo, and the Lambo was a very beautiful car and very winning car, used by several important names and teams and so on. So it's possible anyway to be made in another way by them also, you know, and we will see what is coming on. Of course I will be interested also, because I suspect that after this type of build I have no way to be any longer in touch with this guy, which already was quite rude and unkindly to me also at the time when I had to buy some decal from him. I mean we know each other since some years now, and it always been a kind of cooperation, but you know, there is some distances that you have to maintain also in the way that you talk to people. So, and he always had his own way to do the stuff. So try to have a deal with him, and as I said, don't consider this stuff as made by GT40 Model Works, because it is absolutely not. Finally, the engine bay of this car is made how? Is made in this way, which is provided in full 3D. Little bit tricky to understand the part numbers and the part positioning, because as I said, having no sequence, I had no idea on how to fit inside the body. And I made by deduction, you know, like for a real car, which usually the motors is placed under, or they take away completely the rear back. But in what I understood should be the meaning of the sequence, which I never seen, probably this inner part with the inner grille should be separated, and probably the motor placed in some way, but I tried to do that way, but there was no way to fix the chassis, because the chassis have these other two big side in resin, which don't allow you to folder it and to smash it in this position, so it have to be straight in this position. So for me it was extremely tricky to understand the way to make the assembly. So what I did, it was to modify the inner side of the rear roll cage, that had some minor problems of fitting inside the body, mostly because the inner part was a little bit thick in this position. That may happen, you know, so you don't have so often the type of resin that I produce in my stuff. And note, if you go for a production of this, despite the guy will anyway say no, it's not from the size, it was me giving him the contact to have the same caster of my parts. It was me giving him the contact, which he denied. He said it was another guy. We were talking about this with the caster, and we laughed, and let it be. But probably the future parts will be casted surely in a better way than the part that I get here. Consider that anyway, there is, in my opinion, a little correction to do, and I hope that this can happen exactly with the very ready and very listening guys of the Alpha model. Then when there was a little mistake in their Porsche, I was so happy to see that they corrected, despite the model that I made was still an uncorrected one. You remember that their Porsche GT3R had a mistake that was missing in the front end, in the right front end. It was missing a small air intake that was a little bit tricky to recreate. I seen that all the models that are sending now and be correct, and then I think that they listened to my correction, because it was me the first one pointing in the videos that there was this honestly slightly little mistake, but little tricky to do. So they listened to that, because the opposite situation was here. I tried to make in the beginning, when I get this model, having made so many GT3, once again, the Ferrari, the Honda, the Callaway, and so on, I recognized at once that it was a slightly mistake in the panel line on the door, on the upper safety door, which they had. And I got an horrible response from the company. So I was thinking, what am I doing here? I'm trying to give tips or not? Does he want tips, or does he don't want tips? So what the hell am I doing? So I collected this model, which, as I said, I was ready to give it back in the beginning, because if I have no way to complete, which is the meaning to keep this part for myself, you know, and I never trash anything. So even if you say, okay, stuff for the Camino, you can burn it, I don't care, it is a test, it is just a test shot, then that's it. That's why I cannot complain so much about the quality of the parts. You know, is a beta test, so for sure the final product will be deeply better in quality than this. Will be complete, we'll have instruction, of course, we'll have all the decal sheet, we'll have all the variants that have been developed for this car, you know, as well as I seen probably on the page of the company that they were anyway planning to do an already made by them version of this GT3 first edition car, even because the conversion is quite simple, you know. So if you have the file, the 3D file of this model, you can modify the front clip and the rear extractor. As I said, it's just 2-3 different parts, you know. What I didn't like, honestly, in this build was, first of all, as I say, the matter about the doors, which comes printed in 3D, and they had the double set of them because they didn't fit at all to the body, you know. If you look carefully here, you see that there is a slide. I tried to fill it up as much as I could, but I could not. There was a very huge gap, very difficult to fit, because it inside has this big brick of resin that is very difficult to drill. I didn't care so much, and I tried to get it in shape to see the closed door and to see the line of the Lambo, which I like it best is probably just the line of this beautiful car. And the second stuff, which I didn't like it at all, was the way that they planned to do the wheels. I was thinking that this was probably a mistake on my model, but as you can see here, there is a mysterious conical section of the wheel. I was thinking it was probably a mistake, and because all the 3D parts in this model are a real pain in the beep, because they wrinkle, they constantly wrinkle. If it is tube, they wrinkle. If it is wings, they wrinkle. If it is aileron, they wrinkle. Everything wrinkle in a 3D model, despite they make the catalyzing in the best way ever. I had, for example, in that box, the front extractor coming from the Evo version, which in the original moment which I touched the car was completely straight. When I went to there to try how it looks, it was completely bent and impossible to be used. There is some tricks that you can apply. Usually with an air dryer, the parts return straight, and if you do in the proper way, which I did, for example, on one test wing that I had inside the Alpha model GT3R, that also come because it was printed in a very nice detail, but it was anyway wrinkled, it was anyway bent, the part. I keep it straight with an air dryer, and the part returned straight. It is much more difficult to do than the conventional resin. The conventional yellow resin is much more sensitive to temperature. That's why usually companies make it in a thick version, because it allows you to place the car with the catalyzed gloss over in the oven, in the painting oven, to make it become dry and ultra glossy. That is the reason why several kits are made in a so thick resin, which I personally never ever like it, because it's tricky to work with. And as I said, I was studying the wheels, and I was thinking maybe I used it in the wrong direction, the wheel, which is not. So the wheel have to be this way, and there is no way that the wheel can fit. I tried to understand if it was a meaning for the camber to have the wheel seated on this way, because this is a trick that sometimes also companies as monoplats. For example, here this is the spare wheels coming from the BMW M6 GT3 from the Platz model. They also have a little wrinkle stuff, but first of all it's in rubber, so the rubber is already much more easy to work with, and you can sand a little apart, so it's easy to make it in position, But when it is resin, I try to keep it straight, and nearly all the picture which I get, yes, the car cannot look like a low rider. It cannot look like, like the Filipino car, with all the respect for the Filipino guys, but it cannot be. Honestly, in my opinion, this is a nonsense to do something like this, even if the camber is correct. I try to mount the wheel with the rim, which fits here. There is a step here to fit the part, but in my opinion, the look is not nice at all. So what I did, it was to try to sand one wheel to try to keep it straight, like Tamiya. I mean, for the same identical reason, why Tamiya in their AMG GT3, wonderful, amazing kit of that Mercedes, don't do this stuff. They don't do this trick, And there's also a trick that if you don't like this, if you are a little smart, you simply reverse in the other season the tire, and it became stretched. So even if you have a camber in one direction, if you are a little clever, you can turn it, and the wheel became constantly straight, despite the meaning that usually also the tires coming from monoplats, they are not that nice, And it was my first original idea to use them to modify that. But then I had an even better idea, which probably will give much more realism in my opinion, and it was the one to use the rain tires coming from the Honda NSX GT3, which in reality are slightly bigger because it is a 19-inch wheel compared to an 18-inch wheel. That's why I had to include a little labeling to make it the rim fit perfectly, But I like it much more. The design is not exactly the one used in the GT3. It's slightly different in the inner side, It's like a kind of, not an arrow, but is a little different design. But the wheel from Tamiya is absolutely fantastic, and I think the overall look is really, really nice. You see, there is the difference in the side, in that line inside. Of course, they break up several times while trying to clean them. That is quite common with the parts coming from the 3D. That's it. So I am anyway very satisfied with the overall look of the model, despite all the nasty situation that I had to front with the guy there, with the fellow, and take your own conclusion. That's why, I had a kind of horrific discussion in WhatsApp with this guy, when basically make me understand that he absolutely didn't like what I was doing, and I get insults and I get names for a model, for much less I can end in on real TV with the hands in the face, but fellow prefer that way, so I don't think I will probably have any further cooperation with this guy, and as well as absolutely don't think that I will be paid with the material exchange as we planned in the beginning. It was him writing me that the agreement was about a couple of kits whenever they will be ready, and I am absolutely sure that I will not get anything at all. So I will keep on with the model. What I care is just to have it in my collection. And as I said, if you want to go for something like this, just contact this company. The website is printed somewhere on the chassis there. That one, that is the company. And good luck for the build. I will keep on making videos, and I think I can get it to an end, and quite soon, I just have to finish some minor trimming and recreate some minor part, but I think I can do a very nice model on this stunning Lambo, and is at today a unique piece, sadly, for the long planning that they had. The result is that the model is already old. I'm talking of a car that is already 2018 season. Even if the Evo was 2022, if you take the last evolution of the Huracan was the second Evo 2, is totally different. The front end is badly different. The rear is nearly another car. They changed basically all the body on the Evo 2 car. There is an air intake, there was cars with the fin, so it's extremely different, and you cannot obtain that racer. That is already kind of old, because it's already the car that raced in 2024 and 2025, so it's not the car that will make the next upcoming season, because I know that they are developing new models of Lambo. I don't know which one, but is another one. They don't work any longer on the Huracan. The Huracan is arrived to the end of the project. And that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope that you like the video. Drop a comment down here if you want to say something about all this situation, and just keep in touch, and let's see what's coming up with this interesting test shot car. Thanks for watching. See you in the next.